Relax, as the blaring of horns become the gentle rolling of a river. Let road rage wash over you as it transforms into a relaxing melody. But this isn't just about mindfulness. It's also about life insurance. Because with John Hancock Vitality, living healthy can earn you rewards. We believe your life insurance company should help you live a longer, healthier life. Keep it positive at itslifeinsurance.com. Insurance issued by John Hancock Life Insurance Company, USA, Boston, MA, not licensed in New York, and John Hancock Life Insurance Company of New York, Valhalla, NY. Availability may vary by state.
Good evening and welcome to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, where PGA and LPGA players, legends, and top instructors go to share their insights and playing lessons. Join Chris every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time as he talks with the greats of the game. Tonight's show is sponsored by the French Lick Resort, Ben Hogan Golf, the PGA Tour Superstore, the Salt Creek Golf Retreat, TaylorMade Golf, the Bobby Jones Apparel Company, and Super Speed Golf. Now here's your host, Chris Mascaro.
Good evening, folks, and thank you for coming back and joining me tonight here on Next on the Tee. I'm your host, Chris Mascaro, and I hope your week is off to a really great start. And if you need a little boost, we got you. Don't worry about it. We've got three fantastic guests tonight that I am really looking forward to sharing with you. First up, we're going to get a return visit from former PGA Tour pro Richard Zokol. I'm really looking forward to having Richard back on the show. He's always so much fun when he's here. Want to get his thoughts, and my other guest tonight as well, about the ruling that Haotong Li has had to deal with over the last few days. A lot of controversy about that ruling. Want to get his thoughts. To me, his caddy was clearly walking away from behind Lee's line before he takes his stance, and, certainly way before he addresses the ball. Happened on the 18th green. Lee made the putt for birdie, and then well after the fact, after he finished play, after he signed his card, sometime later he was informed that the infraction occurred and that he was going to be assessed a two-stroke penalty, which dropped him from a tie for third place all the way down to a tie for 12th, costing him $98,000 in prize money. Really want to get Richard's thoughts on what he thinks about that ruling. Plus, if he were out playing on tour today, would he leave the pin in or would he want it out when he's putting? Also want to get Richard's memories of playing alongside Johnny Miller. This weekend is going to be Johnny's last call at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. He and Johnny are both BYU alumni, and they played on tour for a minute, so want to get his thoughts about what he remembers about Johnny Miller. Plus, Richard now is the founder and CEO of a company called Mind Track Golf, which we'll learn about, and they're doing great things along the mental side of the game. You guys know how much we love to talk about the mental side of the game of golf, so we'll talk about what he is doing with that company and a whole lot more. Richard's going to join me here in just a few minutes. Following him, I'm going to get a return visit from one of the great instructors in the game, and that's Brian Jacobs. Brian spent last week down at the PGA Merchandise Show, so we'll hear about some of the events and the other instructors he got to meet with down there. Spent a lot of time doing work for the Golf Channel, so we'll talk about that. We'll also get some drills from him that we can do indoors to keep our golf swings intact as we all wait for spring to arrive. Looking forward to having Brian back on the show about 20 minutes from now. And then we'll wrap up tonight's show with another great instructor, one of Golf Tip Magazine's top 25, and that's Tom Patri. TP is a great friend, and we're going to be blessed to have him pretty much on a monthly basis here on the show throughout 2019. So very excited about that. He, too, was at the PGA Merchandise Show, so we'll hear about the people and the products that struck him while he was down there. We'll also get some more tips on the short game. TP and I are very big on the short game, practicing your short game, spending the majority of the time practicing your short game. So we'll talk about that, plus how to gain more stability in our stances, and TP will be along with me about 40 minutes from now. So a lot more great information, stories, and playing lessons coming your way tonight on this edition of Next on the Tee. Thank you so much for tuning in and taking the journey with me tonight. Before we get started, I always like to remind you about my good friend Mitch Lawrence and his podcast, Talking Golf Getaways. He and his co-host, Darren Bunch, let you know about great places to stay, play, and even eat and drink while you're there. Again, their show is called Talking Golf Getaways, and now it's moved to a new location to Golf Trip X, and that's the letter X for expert. So golftripx.com. Go there and check out their show and learn about some of the great hidden gems and some of the wonderful courses around the country. His twin brother, Matthew, is also fantastic. He's got a great golf show as well called Backspin Golf. His show's on hiatus right now, which you guys know is driving me nuts. But the show typically airs on WLXG ESPN Radio AM 1300 up in Lexington, Kentucky. It's on Sunday mornings from 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. You can go online to WLXG.com and stream his show as a podcast. Catch up on anything you might have missed last year. You're going to love the show. Matthew's so much fun to listen to. Again, you can find it on WLXG.com. And, folks, as you know, we are sponsored by the French Lick Resort. Let's hear a word from our good friend Steve Rondinero about what they've got going on this winter.
Play legendary golf at French Lick Resort, the only place in the country where you can play courses by two Hall of Fame designers on the same property. Our Pete Dye and Donald Ross courses offer two very different challenges. Experience them both and save with our Hall of Fame package. Our two historic hotels are unique as well. Cap it off with a fun visit to the French Lick Casino. Check us out online at FrenchLick.com. Bring a group and save even more. Play legendary golf this season at French Lick Resort.
Yeah, folks, be sure to go online to FrenchLick.com to see for yourself what a wonderful place it is and to book your stay as well. Also want to tell you about our good friends at the Ben Hogan Golf Equipment Company. Now, folks, if you haven't hit Ben Hogan irons since the 80s or the 90s, do yourself a favor and get a demo iron from either their Fort Worth, PTX, or New Edge irons. Go out on the range and compare them to whatever it is you have. All Ben Hogan irons and wedges are handcrafted one at a time in their Fort Worth, Texas factory. No mass production, no shortcuts. Now you can order custom-made irons, wedges, and hybrids by going online to benhogangolf.com. They'll build those clubs to your specifications. And best of all, charge you a fraction of the typical retail price. Check out their complete line of forged irons, wedges, utility irons, hybrids, bags, and accessories by going online to benhogangolf.com. Please also check out our friends at the Bobby Jones Apparel Company by going online to bobbyjones.com. Their semi-annual sale is going on right now. Save up to 50% on some of their clothes. Plus, their early spring collection is out as well, and it looks fantastic. Got my eye on some of their polos and their sweaters. So do what I do. Go online to bobbyjones.com and check out a wonderful array of men's and women's apparel and sportswear. You're going to love it. Again, bobbyjones.com. All right, now back with me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is former PGA Tour pro Richard Zokol. Let me remind you about Richard's background. He's from Kitimat, British Columbia, which is on the coast in the central part of the province. Played his college golf at BYU from 1977 to 81, where he helped them to a first or second place finish in the Western Athletic Conference all 4 years he was there. They finished second in the national championship back in 1980. Richard won the International Champions Tournament that year over in Morocco, captained BYU to the 1981 National Championship. In 2009, that 81 golf team was inducted into the Brigham Young Athletics Hall of Fame. Richard won the 1981 Canadian Amateur Championship by one stroke over Blaine McAllister in a sudden death playoff, and then he turned pro. Among his other wins were the 1982 British Columbia Open and the 1984 Utah State Open. On the PGA Tour, he won twice in 1992 at the Deposit Guarantee Classic and the Greater Milwaukee Open. 2001, he won on the Web.com Tour at the Canadian PGA Championship, and he was inducted that year into the Canadian Golf Hall of Fame. He is now the founder and CEO of MindLink Golf, which you can find online at mindlinkgolf.com, and I'm very excited to have Richard back with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Richard, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you, Chris. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. You're loud and clear, my friend.
Good. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be back with you.
I appreciate that, Richard. So, look, I want to jump right into it. I got to get your thoughts on this weekend's controversial ruling from against Haotong Li, and it certainly created a lot of buzz around the golfing world. And look, I think they've worded that rule pretty subjective around when a player is or isn't taking his or her stance, and the interpretation around the rule is you got to be close, right? If the caddy is in the putting line, if the player is about or close to taking his stance, then you're going to get assessed this penalty. And boy, it was brutal on Haotong Li. $98,000 it cost him. I don't know. What's your thought, Richard? What do you make of the situation?
Well, I think this is a good example of a couple of things. Number one, there's still a lot of gray areas when he starts to take his stance. A lot of people listen to Hank Haney this morning, and he seems to think that it's when you set the putter behind the ball. That's not the case. I think that the rule reads that you when you start to take your stance And I think he did that. And the intention of the whole situation was quite bad. I think everyone who saw it doesn't think there should be a penalty. However, I believe that the rule needs to be written in such a way that there's no gray area. Either he breached the rule or he didn't breach the rule. But what it will do, I can be certain on that. We could be certain on that, Chris, is that no one's going to make that mistake again. I think it's really set the mark that caddy's got to bail out of there a lot faster than the player as he moves into his hitting a shot.
Richard, some of the other things with some of the new rules that have taken effect this month, I want to get your thought about putting with the flag stick in. If you were out on tour now, would you leave it in, take it out?
Well, it's interesting on how, and I've thought a lot about this. Again, I'm going to reference Hank Haney. He's a statistician, and he's making a lot of reference to Dave Pells, who's, both of these people have kind of taken a scientific approach. And I think that if this is a non-makeable putt, say, from outside a good distance, that you don't think the putt's going to go in, statistically, it'll probably help you more times than it'll hurt you. However, when you're a player and you're in the moment, you don't want to look at kind of the average over the course of a year of all your putts. In that moment, you think you're going to make that putt, if it's a makeable putt. And as a player, if I think I can make that putt, I don't want that pin in there, because all it's going to take is one time to bounce it out. And on tour, you've seen it many times. So there's been a lot of shots from off the green where a player has decided to take it out. And I think Ray Floyd has always used that very well. He says leaving the pin in a makeable chip, that it'll hurt a good shot. And I think that's the case. Now, everyone's different. So you look at Adam Scott, and he's obviously benefiting from leaving the stick in. And I think what it's doing for him, it's narrowing his focus. He's focusing on the center of the cup. And it's helping him significantly, I think, from in a way in which it narrows his focus. And I think that you'll see more and more people leaving the pin in. It's interesting to watch Bryson DeChambeau, because he's leaving it in on all kinds of shots and taking it out on occasion. So it's we're going to have to watch and see what happens here, and everyone's going to have to make their own mind up what they're going to do. But one of the concerns that's coming out of this as well is that if someone wants it in or someone wants it out, it could, in fact, slow play down, which is the exact opposite what the intent of this rule change was all about.
What about at a place like, whether it's Augusta National or Oakmont, maybe Pebble Beach, where you're looking at places that historically have very slick greens? Do you think it'll make a difference? Yeah, I'm having a hard time imagining the flag stick in at Augusta National, where the guys are putting 10, 15 footers with the flag stick in. But if you got a really big downhill putt that could run 10, 15 feet by, if you're a little too aggressive, boy, it seems like you'd be keeping that flag stick in.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that you'll see it. The faster the greens and the bigger the slopes, like Augusta National, I think that's when you'll see players leave it in a lot more. I can recall the front pin on 9 at Augusta. You don't get any more, faster situations if you're above the hole, and you're going to want to leave the pin in all likelihood. But it's going to be interesting. There's some talk, Chris, as you probably know, that will the folks at Augusta National make a local rule and say you cannot putt with the flag in. But I think they're the type that will just go along with whatever the USGA rules are, and they'll play by the USGA rules. I don't think they'll cross that line and start making up their own local rules.
Richard, wanted to get your thoughts on Johnny Miller, a guy who's about to step away from the microphone. He was a contemporary of yours for a while out on tour, obviously a fellow BYU alumni. What are some of your favorite Johnny Miller memories?
Oh, gosh, there's so many of them. I remember our coach, Carl Tucker at BYU, when he was telling us stories when Johnny was coming in from California as a young junior golfer, and he was cocky as all get out, and at such an early age, but he was able to back it up with a remarkable game. He won the U.S. Junior in 1964, and he was there long before I was, but did get to know him. I think Johnny, and I played with Johnny on tour, and as a matter, let me just tell you this story. One of the best round of golf I've ever seen played was with Johnny Miller at the Canadian Open. And I think it was in the late 80s, and it was a final round. It was a brutal day. The weather was it was cold. It was windy. And I think on the last day I don't think there were many, a couple of shots shot in the 60s. And Johnny shot 66 that day with a triple bogey. And Chris, it was so remarkable. It was the only time where I really didn't care about my game, and my attention went on his game, because it was just the shots that he was hitting into the wind, downwind, his intuition on how to land the ball with the adverse conditions was just remarkable. And he was like that, as we all know, as a commentator. He commented in golf on television like he played golf. It was out his mouth before it could hit his filter, and he just played reactive, and he spoke reactive, and it's a magical thing. And most of the time, Johnny, or a lot of the time, Johnny was brilliant. A lot of the time, Johnny was wrong. And when you play that way, it's like Babe Ruth. If you're going to be the home run king, you're probably going to be the strikeout king as well. And Johnny was definitely like that. But total admiration for him. Love him as a person. He had tremendous courage to say it like it is. And I think he's going to get the proper tribute when he ends his final commentation on the third round this week in Phoenix at the Waste Management. So it's a pleasure to have known him.
And Richard, speaking of stories and being out on tour like you were throughout the 1980s, I bet you got hundreds of great stories. When you're sitting around at the 19th hole, what are some of your favorite stories to share with your group?
Oh gosh, I love telling the story that, because you're right. I played in the 80s and the 90s, and played. My last year on tour was 2003. I had the opportunity to play in a PGA tournament with Sam Snead, and people kind of look and go, "You're not that old," and they do the math and they try and figure it out. But I did. I played with. There used to be a tournament in Park City, Utah, where there was a senior tour player paired up with a regular tour player, and my partner was Freddie Haas from Louisiana. And we got an opportunity to play with J.C. Snead and Sam Snead. So that was a great story, to be able to say that I played with Sam. I remember my second year on tour when I was still using the headphones on tour, Chris, and I got paired with Arnold Palmer in San Diego, and Arnie came up and he tried on my headphones and he listened to the music. I think he had some rock and roll playing. He didn't approve, Chris. He gave them back to me.
He did not.
He said he didn't like it. He said it was a pretty ballsy thing to do, an outrageous thing to do at the time. And now I think everyone would do it if they allowed it. And then another great opportunity I had in '84, the final round of the PGA Championship at Shoal Creek. I got paired with Jack Nicklaus. So those things are very important. Obviously, winning on the PGA Tour, and losing, having disasters out there, they stick in your mind, as you know, and they're wonderful learning experiences. I don't look at them as trauma. I look at them as great learning experiences and motivating factors. But a lot of in my 20 some odd years of playing, a lot of great memories. That's for sure, Chris.
And Richard, I want to go back to that story when you played with Sam Snead, because Snead is a guy, and as I've read over his history, one of the things that I find so remarkable about him is he was still contending in majors in his 60s. Mm. I mean, not contending like making cuts. I mean, like top fives in his 60s. Yeah. What was it like playing around the golf with him?
Well, it was really interesting. It was quite some time ago, and I was just watching him, at his age, and what contributed in my mind to how he was able to perform at and have the longevity that he did is, first of all, his limiting factor with his physical ability. You know, he has tremendous flexibility. Everyone understands that, you know, at his age, well into his 60s, he could touch the ceiling with his foot by kicking his foot up, and so he had a tremendous flexibility, and you know, as he aged, and we're watching Phil Mickelson, you know, as he's aging. He's certainly not as old as Sam Snead, but if you have flexibility, it gives you that longevity in professional golf. And secondly, I think his second greatest asset was his mind, as he didn't have that type of a mind where, you know, we get paralysis by analysis. He was a very intuitive player. And I think his intuition and his brilliant sense of playing golf and trusting his intuition. I mean, he was great. When you asked him how to fade the ball, he would, you know, you ask David Ledbetter or Hank Haney how to fade the ball, they'll give you a bunch of angles and perhaps some golfing machine terminology. And Sam Snead would go, "Oh, it's easy. I can tell you how to fade the ball. You just take it back, and as you come through, you just fade it." And that was his definition of explaining how to hit a fade. And it gave you insight to him as an intuitive person. And I think those two things are the greatest assets that Sam Snead has. And I think, you know, we're watching Phil Mickelson have, you know, his physical flexibility. That's helping him. And he's such an intuitive player, the way he plays. And I think that's a tribute to the reason why Phil is playing so well at the age he is.
And you mentioned playing with Jack Nicklaus and strength of the mind. I'm not sure there was anybody that was ever more mentally tough. He and Tiger Woods, I think, are two of the most mentally tough players that I've heard people talk about. What was it like playing alongside of Jack, and what did you learn or glean from him during the amount of time that you spent with him?
Well, you know, he was, the first thing that stands out about Jack Nicklaus is his graciousness to others. You know, to journeyman players like myself, you know, I still get Christmas cards from him, and his wife Barbara. They're extremely sensible people and down to earth, and you know, and you're right. Jack's mind, you know, he had a great golf swing, but it was his mind that allowed him to become the champion who he was. Tom Weiskopf said it best. He said, "No one has the better sense of presence than Jack Nicklaus," and that's exactly right. And well, the only other person, as you mentioned, that can compare to him is Tiger Woods. And I think where Tiger got to, he reached the highest level that any human has ever got to. Jack has never won 4 majors in a row. Tiger has, even though they weren't in the same year. And I vividly recall coming down the last hole. Tiger was in the hunt with David Duval to win the Masters, and it was going to be the Tiger Slam. He was going to hold all 4 majors in a row if he won. So, and it wasn't over, and they're on the last hole. And I just couldn't believe how calm Tiger's body language was. And at that moment, I said, this guy, you know, based on his mother, his ancestry, that he's probably doing some meditation, but because no individual, no human has been in that position, has experienced those rough waters of pressure and anxiety, and the body echoes what's going on in the mind, and Tiger was calm as can be, and he's the only other person that has reached such a high level of presence in such difficult golf situations.
Richard, I want to just sort of go back to your, as you mentioned, a couple of decades being out on tour, right? I think, you know, nowadays when we see the players and the amount of money that they make and the private jets and all of that sort of thing, I'm imagining life wasn't like that for you when you were out on tour. Take us back to your time on tour. What was it like playing out on the PGA Tour for you?
Well, in my situation, or our situation with my wife, let's say, you know, I was out there in 1982, and my first year, and I was, you know, I didn't believe I literally belonged, so I learned how to cope with that, and, you know, slapping that headphone on my head and listening to music made such a big difference. You know, the moment I did it, I shot 65 and led the Greater Milwaukee Open, and that was fascinating. So I I was able to kind of, climb the ladder, learn how to play, learn to keep my exempt status, lose my exempt status from time to time, learn how to gain it back, and then win. But I remember when our boys we had twin boys. They were 3 months old in 1987, and we hit the road when they were 3 months old, and it was traveling out of Vancouver, Canada, and playing on the tour, and it was hard. It was not easy. And then towards the end of my career, I remember, this is an interesting feeling. I just thought of this the other day, that it's coming around 2000, and I'm still playing, but I'm early 40s. And someone said to me, he says, "It's too bad you missed the era." And I went, "What do you mean?" He says, "It's too bad because the money that's going to come into the PGA Tour is going to be a lot different than when you played." And this was obviously when Tiger was just coming onto the scene, and I hadn't thought of that yet. But in hindsight, yes. When I won in 1992 the Greater Milwaukee Open, it was $180,000. It was $1 million purse. It was one of the biggest purses on the tour. It was huge, and that amount of money was tremendous, and it allowed for me to do a lot of buy a home, as an example. So lots changed, and a lot has changed in so many ways. And the biggest things that in my mind that changed is the money changed, and of course the equipment has changed. So those are the two biggest things that are changing and making such a big dramatic impact in professional golf today.
And Richard, as you have mentioned a couple of different times, wearing headphones out on the golf course. Now, not during practice rounds, during regular rounds, right? So, right. I think people would think about that, like, how did they let him do that? And where did he get the idea to even try to do that? Talk about how all of that came about.
Sure. Well, I remember it was my rookie year on tour, 1982, and we're into July now, and I think every one of your listeners can understand that, I'm on tour and I haven't been able to make a cut. And I'm just fraught with anxiety. I'm trying. Harder I push, the more difficult I'm making it. And so I said, I got to do something about this, because I know I'm playing good, but my anxiety was getting ahead of myself and putting a lot of pressure on myself. So I just said, listen to music. So I went out and bought a Walkman, and I didn't do it in practice round. I just pulled it out in the first round. And then I started really enjoying it. I'd hit a shot, and I'd put the music back on. I'm listening to like the Eagles. And I'm 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, and I'm playing with Ronnie Black and Larry Rinker in the first round of Greater Milwaukee Open. I'm 3 under, 4 under, 5 under. I'm 6 under, and I'm coming down the last hole, the 18th hole. I'm 7 under par, Chris. And I'm playing great, and I can't believe how calm I am. Like, I'm in a different world. I'm listening to music, and then I shoot 65. I'm leading the tournament. And then the officials come up to me and say, "What are you listening to?" They had to listen to it, because if I was listening to golf lessons I'd be disqualified. They had to call the USGA to see if it was legal. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get disqualified here. And then they found out there was nothing wrong with it, and I could do it. And it just distracted my mind from getting ahead of myself. It made such a big difference. So I did it for about a year. I led the tournament after the first round, led the tournament after the second round, the third round, all the way to the fourth hole of the tournament. Calvin Peete went on to win. But it showed me at that point that this is a very mental game, because the only thing that was different was what was occupying my mind when I played golf. And at that point, I started to get very much into the psychology of golf.
So from there, let's transition to what you're doing now, founder and CEO of MindTrack Golf. Let our listeners know, you've talked about it a little bit before, but I think you really got it going now. Talk about what MindTrack Golf is.
Well, last time we spoke, I think I mentioned that our product, which is an app and a platform, was under construction. So it was right. We were getting it built overseas, and the first product was delivered to us just before Christmas time. So now I went through it. It functions, and I'm very excited about it. And I want to invite any listener. You can find out about it on our website, mindtrackgolf.com. And track is spelled TRAK, mindtrackgolf.com. And so right now, what we're doing, we're taking the product. We call it the Alpha. So right now, we've tweaked it. Our team has tweaked it, and it's going into beta testing in another 2 weeks. So by the end of this week, we're going to get the tweaks we've made to the Alpha, and Then we're going to, I've got a list of people. I started talking to, there's guys like Henry Brunton, Nick O'Hearn in Australia, some other teachers, Brent Saunders, Philip Jonas. And over the first quarter of 2019, Chris, we're going to beta test the product because we want to make sure the user experience, and I know it works, and it's going to be able to give reports back to the golfer after every round, how many shot lost events they have in their round, and it basically revolves around where the golfer's attention is. And our data collection device, so you're going to have to tap on the club you used and an evaluation of how well you subjectively executed your shot and how well you valued your assessment of the shots. We call those two things key performance markers. And keeping track of these will then pull your attention into the present moment. We want to condition everybody to learn to detach from the result because that's where anxiety lives. That's where golfers have a tendency to get ahead of themselves, and that's where they make their mental mistakes. So we're very excited about bringing this. It's a mental game improvement platform and app, and we plan on it being commercially launched later this year, perhaps in the midsummer, but we're doing our beta testing right now, and it's something that, the best players in the world can use, as well as, a 20 handicapper who has a little too much anxiety going on in their head.
Well, Richard, before we let you go, remind our listeners about not only, you mentioned the website, which is fantastic, and what you're doing there, but let them know how they can also follow you, whether it's on social media, whether, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. How can we stay up to date with all the great things you're doing?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Richard Zokol. And once again, the website is Mindtrack Golf, and that's track spelled with T-R-A-K, mindtrackgolf.com. And I want to leave everyone with this statement that I've created. It's right on the front of the webpage. The burden to perform on the golf course is less about your golf swing and more about those battles lost within the confines of your own mind. It doesn't matter if you're public speaking, any performance anxiety. This is what we work on, and to get through those anxious moments and to recondition yourself to optimize your performance.
Fantastic stuff, Richard. I really look forward to hearing all the great things that you continue to do, how the beta test goes. Always so much fun when you're a part of the show. I hope you'll come back again and join me again soon.
I'd love to, Chris. Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to the next time we connect.
Thank you, Richard. Me too. Take care. All the best to you and your family.
Bye-bye.
That is the great Richard Zokol. And again, mindtrackgolf.com. Looks like great stuff, folks. I spent some time out on the website over the last couple of days. Really looks like good stuff. And I'm telling you, you guys know we talk about the mental side of the game so frequently on this show. And if we can do a lot better job of reducing our anxiety, get rid of the negative self-talk. How often do you hear us talk about that on this show? Get rid of the negative self-talk. How much more fun would we have if we were just out there having a good time, like Richard talked about, with the headphones on, right? Get your mind in the right place, relax yourself. Boy, it would make this game so much more fun to be a part of. I really look forward to hearing from Richard and all the great things that they do there at mindtrackgolf.com and having him back on the show again real soon. All right, before I get to my next guest, Brian Jacobs, I want to remind you about our friends over at Super Speed Golf. Now used by over half the tour players around the world, Super Speed Golf is the fastest and most effective way to increase your swing speed. 3 8-minute training sessions are all you need per week to get a 5% increase in that swing speed. And with sets for golfers of all ages now and over 1 year of included video instruction, Super Speed offers a complete solution to help you start bombing it off the tee. Visit them online at superspeedgolf.com to pick up your set today. I want to welcome our new partners at 2 Under. The unofficial underwear of the PGA Tour, worn by PGA Tour players like Ricky Fowler, David Toms, Jerry Kelly, William McGirt, Jason Kokrak, and Matt Everett, to name just a few. Your buddies are going to think you're a stud if they're even seeing you in your underwear, but that's another story. And your girlfriend and or wife is going to love the side effects, a visibly enhanced profile. The Joey Pouch technology provides the ultimate male asset management. It separates a man's most valuable assets from bodily contact to reduce unwanted skin-on-skin contact, providing less chafing, more control, and an altogether more luxurious feel. Start every round 2 under by wearing the coolest performance briefs on the market. Use code NXT on T20, so next on T20, to save 20% off your order at 2under.com. And that's the number 2, UNDR.com. Yeah, be sure to go check them out online at 2UNDR.com. And now back with me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is Brian Jacobs. Let me remind you about Brian's background. He earned his undergraduate and then Master's of Education degree at the State University of New York at Brockport, became a PGA Assistant Director of Instruction at Ravenwood Golf Club up in Rochester, New York back in 2006, simultaneously becoming a staff instructor for Hank Haney Golf. 2010, he became the Director of Golf Instruction and a Hank Haney Certified Instructor, at Iran Dequois Country Club in Rochester. 2014, he became a lead instructor on the Golf Channel's Golf Academy. 2015, he started the Brian Jacobs Golf Academy at Ridgemont Country Club, also in Rochester. I got my Brian Jacobs golf T-shirt on right now, and I'm very excited. He is back with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Good evening, Brian. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Chris, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it very much, and thanks for wearing the brand.
You know it's one of my favorites. I always try to have it on when I'm doing the show. I appreciate you, Brian. So, Brian, I saw you were down in Orlando for the PGA Merchandise Show last week. Wanted to get your thoughts. What did you see at the show? How'd it go?
Oh, it was great. I had a wonderful time. I'm a little hoarse, so I came back with a little bit of our respiratory flu up here for New York. I didn't want to leave, actually. I knew I was coming back to cold weather, so it was great there. It was fantastic. It seemed more vibrant this year, and I've been going about, I guess, probably 11 years now, 10 years, and it just seemed to be a happy place this year. Everything seems to be coming back, and there were some new vendors there and some different training aids, and I spent the majority of my time at the Golf Channel area. We actually introduced some new business solutions for instructors called Marketplace, and then also getting out to the instructors to help them market their business and position themselves a little bit better in the marketplace.
And Brian, at a huge event like that, it's got to give you an opportunity to meet and connect with, other great instructors, plus people, in the golf industry and in and around the game. So through your time there, who were some of the people that you got to spend some time with, you walked away from and said, you know what, that was really good time spent?
Yeah, there's just so many there. Just so many there. Probably the people that made the most impression on me were my good friend Lou Guzzi from Ambler, PA. Lou was the 2013 Teacher of the Year, and he's just a phenomenal speaker, phenomenal man, phenomenal friend. Every time I see him, he's just so uplifting, and got a chance to spend some time with Mike Malaska, who's also wonderful. And then also Mike Bender. Mike, I see quite a bit actually at some PGA Magazine events, and he's absolutely just wonderful. Just such knowledge of the game, and so much compassion for people, and so much drive, to get them to want to play. Deb Vanderlo was there. She's very decorated LPGA, and first time I've ever met her. I've spoken with her over the years through social media. And she's actually from a few towns over from me here in Rochester, but she lives in the Dallas area, or Houston area, I should say, and she's done very, very well. So you can really tell the difference when you get around these top instructors, just why they are where they are, and so humbling to be around them. And I'm so grateful that they'll take time and talk and share. And I didn't get to see my good friend Michael Breed, though. He runs around that place like it's a track. So I'll catch up with him another time. But unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to catch up with Michael. But I'll get him in the future.
And did you see anything, any new equipment, any new gadgets that you thought, boy, I got to get me one of those?
Well, everywhere you walk, it's just you want one. I actually spent some time at a place called Tough Lie 360, which I thought was really cool. It's actually a movable deck that you put at different degrees of pitch so that you can simulate side hill or uphill lies or downhill lies. You can put a golf ball on it and it won't fall, it won't slide off, like a homemade one that I used to make. I saw another booth and spent some time at a place called V-Golf, which is you put a pair of glasses on and you hit a shot and you see it on the golf course. It's pretty crazy. And so my avatar could be there talking to one of my players, coaching them virtually, which is so crazy to me. I mean, I'm almost 60.
Wow.
And it's crazy what's happening. And this hasn't gone to market yet. They're just kind of looking at things. And I thought that was really, really cool. Some of the, the old standbys like TrackMan was there and K-Motion's there, and that's just getting better and better and better. Blast Golf, was there. Just some of the technology things that were there. And then I spent a little time, believe it or not, in a booth called Drive, which is it's a skincare product. So I'm very fair-skinned and bald-headed, so I'm always conscious of protecting myself. And so there's a new product PGA endorsed, and so I stopped by the booth to check it out, and it's good stuff. Can't wait to use it. So a little of everything.
And Brian, yeah, no kidding. I mean, at the end of the day, it seems like, a sort of a golf wonderland, if you will, or a Disney World for golf, apropos that it's down there in Orlando. Yeah. Talk about when you get in there, because the place is massive. And I got to imagine, looking back to your first time that you walked through those doors, what was it like? What's it like when you get in there? It's got to be overwhelming.
It is. It is. So the first 7 or 8 years that I had been there, I actually helped out in the I-line booth. So we basically came in the back doors on the loading deck and went straight to our booth, and that was it. You just spent all your time in the booth. Last year was my first year kind of out on the floor, and I was just, you almost want to sit in a corner, and cry, because there's just so much stuff to do, and people are coming at you from all different directions. I can imagine, I've driven in Atlanta. It's kind of like driving in New York City. My first impression was the people were all the same way. They're kind of looking at you, but they're not really looking at you. And then you veer off, and I'm a really nice guy. I always say, excuse me. And so I learned this year, you walk, get your head down, and pick your booth where you want to go. And you get in the wave, and you get going, and wherever there's a star or somebody that's relevant in the game is where there's going to be a big crowd, just like a tournament. And so you'll see, like, maybe at Golf Channel, we had the long drive guys were there, and so they had 10 or 12 deep there, and then the crowd disappeared, and then they went to Volvic, and that's where they were signing autographs. And so one of my buddies, Jeff Crittenden, who was a finalist in Remax a couple years ago, he was there signing. And I mean, there was probably 30 people deep getting pictures and holding the belts. And so you learn to avoid, kind of the big crowds. And you ducked in between a few aisles, and that's how you got to where you wanted to be. So you definitely have to have a game plan, though. It's hard just to, lump around and get anything done. So I had some places that I really wanted to get to and to see. And then I spent a little time just kind of walking with friends that I do every year that used to come into the booth. We now meet and walk around a little bit. And they're from Ireland, so it's always fun to get their perspective on things too.
Brian, I want to switch gears a little bit and get some playing lessons from you. You've got a drill where you are holding a golf club in each hand. And talk about that and how it makes us swing our arms in unison. How does that drill help us, and what does it prevent and fix?
Well, it'll prevent mainly from either being too shallow or too steep. So we'll assume that the person's right-handed. If they're too steep, their trail arm will cross over their lead arm, so the shafts will make an X on the lead side of their swing. Or both shafts will swing too far to the left, too close to their body. Conversely, if they're too shallow, the shafts will swing, a little bit too far to the right. So you want your trail hand and your lead hand to have some unison to it or be synced up. And then at the same time, you're syncing your body. We call it educated hands, or at my academy, and people's hands typically, you'll see someone where they'll swing their right arm over their left and they don't even realize that it's happening. And then we talk about the effects, like, well, what happens when your right hand swings over to your left? What's going on with the club face? And they'll say, I don't know. It's opening. Well, it can't be open. It has to be closed, right? Well, why do you think your ball flight starts to the left all the time? And so we can talk about, hey, let's get your palms a little more square, your trail palm a little more square with that trail shaft, and then the lead shaft, let's square it up a little bit. And if they really watch their lead hand, they'll have the club head in their hand, and they can start to see how they're bowing their hand and how their right palm will start to match up. And then we flip the club over, and we're on our way.
Brian, also talk about, for the majority of us, like you just pointed out, we're all freezing around the country unless we're down with my good friend Tom Patri down there in Naples, Florida. But most of us are freezing right now.
Right.
So
yeah,
indeed,
we are for sure.
So we can't even fathom.
25 tomorrow.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, we even here in Atlanta. I mean, right now it's in the upper 20s. So you can't even fathom being outside and practicing your golf swing or getting on the range. So for when we can't do that, right? What is something we can do indoors to so we don't get too much rust on our golf swings?
Right. I would say number one, commit yourself to some type of mobility program, whether it's home program or at the gym, where you're working on your flexibility, whether it be yoga or whether it be some speed training. Get with an expert that can train you physically. We have 4 areas that we work in all the time, either tactical, technical, physical, or mental. Spend time working on your mental game too. Read books. I heard Richard, before, your guest before. I just think it's just a great time to really work on your mental game, your processes of how you want to hit shots and some visualization, and then read some books. I read a great book called Decisive by Chip and Dan Heath, not only for life, but also for when you're having to make those tough decisions, understanding where your safety zone is, and also when you're excited or when you're anxious, how to calm yourself down a little bit and make things happen the right way. We're very fortunate up here. We have a 4-bay simulator area that we're busy, 12 or 15 hours a day at. But if they don't have that, they can work in a mirror, have a full-length mirror and like a dowel rod or a grip with a little bit of a shaft in it and watch yourself move. There's a million training aids that are out there that they can work on impact. They could get something called blast motion and work on their putting and get some analytics. Just having an app on their phone and putting on the carpet, when you're indoors, we find lots of ways, to get around the golf, not being on the golf. So Brian, those are all great ways.
And Brian, to your point a moment ago, right, putting. Let's talk putting for a moment. What are some drills that we can do indoors that we can try to hone our putting strokes?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I would do with anybody is to get fit for their putter. So we have an indoor studio. I know a lot of places may not, but if you can't get fit, then at least get yourself a mirror. I would, recommend a putting alignment mirror for my line. And mark your mirror up, and you can work on your stroke indoors. They have plastic tees that go inside of that mirror that you can make gates, release gates, and ball gates through, and you can just work on your stroke, work on, just tempo. And now with just the way things are, Chris, you can get mats and all kinds of stuff that are really inexpensive that you can work with all winter long. There's no excuse for anybody that wants to improve to not improve. They should be, working at it just like they would be in the summertime. And you don't have to hit balls to be great, but your putting you can improve so quickly. If I have an alignment mirror and just roll a few balls every night, on carpeting, or if you have the means to get a a mat, get a mat and put it down in your basement or roll it up and put it in the corner and have a good time with your family and have putting contests. And the next thing you know, you're outdoors and you're a great putter.
Brian, just a couple more before we let you go. But you've got so many wonderful students and you do such a great job. Has there been a moment for you where you've watched one of your students, whether it's in a tournament, out on the golf course, or just out on the range hitting balls, where you thought, you know what, we did some good work here? That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every day, right? We have them every day. I remember hearing a story about Ted Williams once, and you may have heard this before. He was out of the lineup, and his replacement had said to him he was in a good hitting streak, and he had said to Ted Williams, he said, he goes, did you ever have those days where the ball just looks like a balloon and you can see the seams and everything? And Ted Williams said to him, yeah, he goes, every day. It's like that. So when I look at students, I'm very gratified because I know where they've come from and I know where they're heading. But in particular, I have one junior that I've worked with since he was 10. He's 21 now. And he's a man. And I mean, he is just a beast. And he had some success early in his career. When he was about 14, he won the New York State Juniors. And then he had the last 5 or 6 years have been really, really tough for him. He struggled a lot, with his mental game. Physically, he's phenomenal. But, he just had so much success and they put pressure the kids put pressure on themselves to, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to play D1 golf and then I'm going to go on tour and then I'm, they have that straight line drawn and we used to talk a lot about it. Hey, life is really wiggly. A lot of things happen and, we need to make sure that we're prepared and I couldn't be prouder of him. The last year in particular, he's really taken a lot of ownership of the game. We talk all the time now. We did that when he was a kid and then he kind of got away from it and he just realizes that we all need somebody and it's just been really gratifying to watch him play. He'll finish his senior year this spring, and he's I think in the lead of the conference right now, and so I'm just really, really proud of him, and I just can't wait to see what happens in the future, with him, whether he plays professional golf or whether he just stays amateur and goes to work. He's just really grown so much the last year.
Well, Brian, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the great things that you're doing, whether it's online on your website or it's on social media.
Sure. Yeah, they can go to my website at brianjacobsgolf.com, on Instagram at brianjacobsgolf, or they can go to golfchannelacademy.com and just type in Brian Jacobs and a few videos will come up, which would be great. And if they ever want to reach out, just go ahead through the contact form on the website, and I'm happy to take a look at their swings, and there's no charge, and I'm happy to talk golf with them anytime they want.
Well, Brian, you know what a big supporter I am of yours. I think you do such great work, and like I say, sitting here with my Brian Jacobs Golf Academy T-shirt on because I think you're a great guy, you're a great teacher, and I can't thank you enough for continuing to come back and be a part of the show.
Chris, thanks so much for having me on. And this cold weather keeps coming, I'm going to send you a coat. We'll send you a Brian Jacobs coat to sit in your office.
I appreciate it. I look forward to it. Now I'm rooting for a little bit more cold weather. Hope Punxsutawney Phil sees this shadow so we can get some 6 weeks more of winter. So
that's right.
Take care, Brian. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Chris. God bless.
See you, Brian. That's a great Brian Jacobs. BrianJacobsGolf.com. What a great guy. I really enjoy Brian every single time he's on the show and can, communicating with him in between times. He is a great instructor and a 10 times better person, and really look forward to catching up with him hopefully again real soon. All right, I got my next guest, Tom Patri, hanging on the line. Going to get to Tom Patri on the other side about our good friends over at the PGA Tour Superstore.
This segment of the show is brought to you by the PGA Tour Superstore. See why golfers everywhere are proud to call PGA Tour Superstore their golf pro shop. Visit them online at PGATourSuperstore.com. Now back to Chris and more of the show.
And now back with me on the French Lick Resort guest line is one of the top instructors anywhere on the planet, and that is Tom Patri. Tonight is going to mark the 11th time that Tom has been with me here on the show. And this year, I'm blessed to tell you, Tom is going to be making regular monthly appearances with me, which I am very excited about. Tom won the Division II National Championship and was an All-American at Florida Southern. He has been named a Teacher of the Year everywhere he's been. Golf Magazine has named him a Top 100 teacher every year since 2000. Golf Tips Magazine recently named Tom one of their top 25 instructors for the 2019-2020 season. He is also a contributing editor for them. Adding Tom and his instruction to that magazine, I'm telling you, that's the reason. I'm a subscriber now, and the reason I did it is because of Tom. Tom has worked with players like Fred Couples and Seve Ballesteros over the course of his career, and I am extremely honored he is back with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Good evening, TP. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Christopher, how the heck are you doing, pal? Nice to hear from you.
I'm really well, Tom. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I got to one-up Brian Jacobs. I'm not going to send you a T-shirt, and I'm not going to send you a jacket. I'll just send you a plane ticket to come to Naples. It's going to be about 75 and sunny tomorrow, so you can keep the jacket. Come on down.
I appreciate you, TP. Nothing I love more than doing that, my friend. So, Tom, I want to start right about there. You know, talk about your instruction. I want to start by reading a letter that one of your young students wrote that I saw out on social media. And it reads, "Thank you for everything, Coach. You do way too much for me. I couldn't ask for a better coach. I appreciate everything you have done for me and won't take for granted the potential I have as a player and as a person with you alongside me." What a great letter, Tom. That's got to be extremely special to you.
You know, Chris, that letter, we talked about that off air, in a text message, you and I. That young man is 13. 13 years old, wrote that letter, and he's been with me since he was 7. He's a wonderful young man. Jack is from Long Island, and I work with him during the summers. And, every once in a while in your career, a kid comes along, and I've been blessed to have a lot of kids that were wonderful, but every once in a while a kid comes along that's really special and different and polite and bright and engaged and passionate, and Jack's one of those kids. So that letter came in the mail last week in that typical 13-year-old boy chicken scratch handwriting, and those things just make your day. I mean, I've been blessed. I've had a young lady who I coached who went on to win on tour a couple of times, and she came to me when she was 14. I've had another couple of kids that have played really, really special college golf, and actually one of them who had a really wonderful college career now has 3 boys of his own, and I still work with that family. Those kind of things just make everything so worthwhile.
They become sort of like trophies, don't they? I would assume things like that mean more than just about anything else that you could do, is to see a young man or a young lady grow up and be not only a good golfer, but become good fathers, good mothers, good people. And then to have a letter like that from Jack, those have got to be like the trophies of your life that you can look back on for the rest of your life and think, wow, I've made an impact.
I look at it more just like family. I mean, that's part of my golf family, if you will. And those people, those are relationships that are lifelong. They'll be with me forever. Even if I don't, geographically still match up with them, I still keep in touch with those people. One young man that came to me when he was 13, his name is Gary Barton. He's the fellow I just referred to as 3 young boys now that are learning how to play. He and his wife, we both, cross paths from time to time still, and when we don't cross paths, we reach out, whether it's a Christmas card or a text message or a phone call every now and then. He was a very special young man for me way back when. And he's now turned into an incredible father and an incredible husband and an incredibly successful person in the business world. So, those are special relationships. They're like I said, they're my golf family.
Tom, switching gears a little bit. Last week, you, just like Brian, you were down at the PGA Merchandise Show. I saw an event that you were at, along with a couple of other great friends of ours here on the show. You were there with Allison Kurtz and Cindy Miller, some of the 20 of the top 25 instructors that Golf Tip Magazine has named for this year. So you guys were all together. What was it like hanging out with your peers like that and getting to spend some time with them?
Well, I've been pretty blessed in the last year, Chris. Vic Williams, the editor of Golf Tips, and people who own Golf Tips have asked me to be part of their selection process for the top 25. And so Vic Williams and I are actually the co-chairman of that selection process. So this was our first go at revamping and retooling the Golf Tips top 25 list. So I took part with Vic in selecting everybody that was in that room. So that was a really special event. First time Golf Tips has brought their list together like that in a reception for people to network and meet one another and kind of kick off this new top 25. So, in that room were so many talented people. You mentioned Allison Kurt and Gail Graham was there. Deb Vangelo was there. And I can go on and on. There's a fellow that I had never met that I was connected on social media with, a guy named Bob Grissett from California, who I think might be the best unknown teacher in this country, actually. And if people don't know who he is or aren't familiar with him, Bob Grissett is on Facebook very actively. He has posts some incredible, might have the most extensive library of golf videos of good players and still pictures of good players that I've ever seen. Just a knowledgeable guy, so I get to spend some time with him. We had people in that room when we constructed that list that are Teachers of the Year in various sections, or in several Golf Hall of Fames. We had former PGA Tour players, LPGA Tour players. People were in, incredible places in the industry. So it was a pretty cool event. And you're going to see Golf Tips magazine change radically in the next 12 to 24 months. And I got to credit Vic Williams. He's done almost a miraculous job single-handedly relaunching that brand. It's going to be really cool, very cool.
So, Tom, while you were there walking around the merchandise show, what caught your eye? Anything really come across and say, wow, that's fantastic?
Well, I'm a little different than your previous guest, Mr. Jacobs, who I think the world of. But when I get to the show, Chris, before I get to the show, in my cell phone by the hour is an exact map and booth number or meeting room number of where I've got to be at what time. So my show visits aren't strolling the floor so much. They're pretty mechanical. I got to get from point A to point B, get into a meeting or a situation, get out of it by a certain time and get to the next event. So I don't really get to spend a lot of time, as much time near as I'd like to, Chris, on the show floor. I'm pretty much there to do some business, to do some networking, to do some meeting with people that I've got to get to, or they've got to get to me and get the heck out of there. So I went up the day before the demo day and did a photo shoot with Golf Tips for one full day. Went to the demo day. At the demo day, other than visiting the Titleist tee, which I had to be at because I'm part of that company. I was in meetings and I was at a demo day and I was to a dinner that night that I had to be at. And then the next day at the show, I was in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings. And then I was at the Golf Tips reception that night. I got out of there at 10 o'clock at night, drove home till 1 o'clock in the morning, and got up the next day and was on the lesson tee. So,
wow.
I'm exhausted. I'm kind of exhausted recounting that because I'm an old man, and that's a lot of moving and shaking for an old guy like me. But that's how my show goes. So, Brian, if you're still listening out there, you need to be a little more organized. Don't worry about those people from Ireland, and you can get some more work done at the show next year. I'm happy to consult with you on that and try to mentor you on how to use the show properly.
Tom, 5 years ago this week, we lost Seve Ballesteros, and Seve was a guy that you admired and actually worked with for a time.
You're gonna hurt me, Chris, here, but I'm gonna try to keep this together. This is not easy for me. So, yeah. Seve is a guy, and I'm having a little bit of a hard time here, so pardon me if I take a deep breath for a second. Seve is a guy who I was very, very blessed to get to know, spend some time with, spend some time on the practice tee with. It was kind of a joke that he asked me for help because he probably helped me more than I helped him in the hour. I take that back. He did help me more than I helped him in the hours we spent together. We stayed in communication while he was ill. As a matter of fact, Chris, and this is a hard one for me, but about 2 weeks before Seve passed away, we had some news that he had taken a turn for the worst. And my cell phone rang one day, and I knew the number. It was obviously an overseas number, and I picked it up. And about 30 seconds into the conversation, I realized that he was really calling, kind of going through his Rolodex to say goodbye to people. And it was very clear what he was doing, very shortly into the conversation. And I kind of lost it, and he kind of lost it, and we spoke for about 15 or 20 minutes, and he was gone a couple of weeks later. He was not what some people, especially American fans, think, we remember the confrontation at Kiewel with Paul Azinger, and we remember some of the cups where he was a little fiery, and as American fans, we didn't like that. He was a very, very aggressive competitor. He was there to do one thing to win. Was there some gamemanship? Absolutely, there was gamemanship. But we did that too. We do those things too. But off the golf course, he was an absolute gentleman. He was. Denise and I always got a Christmas card from him every year. I still have them, as you can imagine, tucked away in one of my files. A couple of very special photographs in my office of he and I together. I miss him very, very much.
And Tom, you and I frequently talk about the importance of practicing your short game when we're spending time together. Nobody had a better short game than Seve did. You talk about how he helped you. What were some of the things that you learned from him over the time you got to spend?
Yeah, people have to realize that, the Phil Mickelsons of the world and the Seve Ballesteros of the world and the Raymond Floyds of the world, the Ben Crenshaws of the world, the Brad Faxons of the world, they're freak shows. Those are, although Seve showed me certain things that he did with the golf club and the way he approached certain shots, the gift of touch and the gift of feel and the gift of imagination can be developed to a degree by a great instructor and a great student. But those guys have the intangible that God gave them that's not taught. He can do things with a golf club. You hear the stories about him hitting a 5-iron out of a greenside bunker. I watched that happen. I watched him with 5-iron shots, simulating a sand shot out of a greenside bunker with a 5-iron over a very high-lit bunker at Westchester Country Club during my time there. We were spending time together fooling around one day, and I can't hit a 62-degree sand wedge or lob wedge today the way he hit the 5-iron out of the bunker. And if you can explain to me, Chris, to this day how he did that, I would love to hear your explanation because I don't have a clue. He was so gifted and so talented. He had such a great pair of hands and such imagination. Those things aren't necessarily taught.
Tom, switching gears again, the golf world is sort of buzzing about the ruling over the weekend that Haotong Li had to deal with because his caddy was somehow in his putting line. It cost him 2 strokes. I wanted to get your thought. What do you think of what you saw with respect to that?
I think Mr. Li was subject to the same referee that the New Orleans Saints was subject to during that game against the Rams. It must have been the same referee. I think Mr. Li kind of got a bad call there. And once again, I'm going to get in trouble again. I'm always getting in trouble. You always get me in trouble, Chris. I think the USGA is, again, about a step too slow in their understanding of what the possibilities are when they make rules like this. I think that, the rule has to be defined. If the rule is too subjective, I think that, now I'm not going to blame the USGA for this, that person who put that penalty on Mr. Li at that event probably jumped out a little too quickly. I think we got to go to the sideline camera for a little review on that one. I think they got a bad call there, a real bad call there. But when you make a ruling like that, and there's that gray area of, when the player is in fact in the stance and when in fact the caddy is out of the way, I think the definition and the guidelines there are a little bit too vague. And by the way, that call in New Orleans was horrendous, absolutely horrendous.
Yes, it was. Tom, what about putting with the flagstick in? What do you think? Good idea, bad idea?
Well, listen, Chris, I can promise you, and I don't compete much anymore. I play a few senior events a year. whether it's a senior event I'm going to play in the future or you and I are playing a little $5 NASA, if I've got a 30-footer downhill, that flag stick is staying in. I can promise you it's staying in. And I realized when we first played this game 1,000 years ago, the flag stick was left in. So it's not something that didn't happen in golf at one juncture in its history. But today, with really fast surfaces, on tour, really quick. Now, picture this. What happens, Chris, in April at the Masters on the 18th hole at Augusta if that pin's in that Sunday's pin position on that lower level behind that front bunker, and somebody hits them on the top level with a one-shot leader tied and rolls one down over the hill and it's going 1,000,000 miles an hour and it hits that flagstick dead center and falls in? What do we think about that? And how will the USGA react to that? Will they go back and pull a Rocco immediate and then all of a sudden the long putter is illegal now again? Adam Scott can't use it, and you take it out of what do we do then? Does it change it? Does it taint the championship? So I think we got to be really careful when we say, when somebody made a statement this week to me, said, yeah, well, the flagstick, that's how we started the game, way back when. I said, yeah, but the green speeds aren't what they are now, okay? The sophistication of agronomy isn't what it is now, and what if? What if? So I think that some of these rules, dropping the ball from knee height, why don't you just put it on a tee and let the guy place it? When I first started competing, you had to drop it over your shoulder and you couldn't see it. When you have a penalty, are you entitled to create a lie? And basically, at knee height, I can promise you a set of skilled hands will be able to almost always create the lie they want to, unless you're in an extreme situation. So, drop it from your knee? Really? I think that you're going to see a year from now some USGA folks revisit some of these things and maybe come up with some revisions. I don't think we're out of the dark yet on these rules.
Tom, I got to get a couple of playing lessons before we let you go. And you recently posted a piece of advice on social media that reads, use ground force for balance and stability and deliver forward-leaning club shaft. Talk about what you mean by that.
Okay, so I think we get fooled again by the freaks of nature. Like we get fooled by Bubba, we get fooled by Justin Thomas because we see these pictures and their feet are basically off the ground at impact. So right away people think it's okay to get up on your toes and hit shots. So we look at the exceptions, we don't look at the rules. So I think Bubba and I think JT are basically freak shows. So take them aside for a second and let's go examine guys that are really good ball strikers at impact. Whether you're looking at Justin Rose, you're looking at Adam Scott, whether you're looking at Tiger, we can keep on going. Most of those guys, Nick Price in his prime, most of those guys who are great iron players are very grounded at impact. Okay, that right heel doesn't come off the ground really till post impact. Okay, the left foot is a plant foot, the right foot is a pivot foot, and they're using the ground for stability and balance and delivering the club shaft in a forward-leaning manner. They hit crisp iron shots. They hit very long iron shots that can control trajectory and spin rates that way. So I don't think most amateurs use their feet very well and use the ground very well. It'd be really hard to play golf in a pair of roller skates on a linoleum floor. Okay? I think people have to understand that there are spikes on the bottom of your shoes for a reason, and you want to be balanced and stable when you deliver the club shaft. So I've never seen a great athlete, Wayne Gretzky in hockey, Derek Jeter at shortstop, Michael Jordan on the basketball court, Olga Korbut in the Olympics as a gymnast. I've never seen a great athlete that didn't have great footwork. Great footwork, okay? Now, again, are there exceptions? Is Bubba and JT an exception? Absolutely. Freak show, put them on a shelf on the side. Don't use them as your examples. Look at the majority. Look at what's going on with ground force. Look at what's going on with balance and footwork. And that's who you should kind of watch and copy after. I tell you what, that pairing at Torrey Pines on Sunday of Justin Rose and Adam Scott in that last group, if you want to look at two golf swings with great footwork and great stability, go ahead and review that film right there coming down the stretch.
And to take that just a little bit further, Tom, one of the tips I saw you recently posted is about stance. You call it wide and let it ride. Talk about what that means.
That was more referring to a backswing condition, Chris, where, I think that, you want to create some width in your backswing. You want to use width in your backswing to then shallow out the club in your downswing. I think Jim Furyk is a great example of an exacerbation of that. The club moves outside and away from him, and he routes it down in the downswing and shallows it out and works underneath the plane. So he's a little bit of an exaggeration of what really is proper. So the tour plays golf wide to narrow, creates some width, drops it inside, and the average player plays golf narrow to wide, or some people call that over the top. So if you're going to get the club shallow in the downswing, you got to create some width to create the shallowness and to shallow out the club in transition into your downswing.
Tom, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the great things you're doing, both on your website and on social media as well.
Well, Chris, I don't like the warm weather in Naples, Florida, so I think I'm going to move to Toronto. But in the meantime, I'm in Naples, Florida. It's by the way, everybody up in the Northeast right now, it's 60 degrees at 9:15 at night. It's nice and still outside. It's pretty warm. You can maybe put a light sweater on if you wanted to. You don't have to. But anyway, www.tompatri.com is my website. tpatri@mindspring.com is my email address. My business number is 239-404-7790. I take text messages anytime you want to get to me. And I'm at the Esplanade in North Naples, Florida. And it's going to be 73 and sunny tomorrow, Chris. And you can still get on that plane on Delta in Atlanta at about 8 a.m. You can be here by about 10:15. And we hit some balls about 1 o'clock after lunch.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Come on, man. Come on.
I know it. I'm going to get down and see you, my friend. I can't thank you enough, though, for your time tonight. And like I say, excited that you're going to be a regular part of the show this year. It's always fun getting to spend some time with you. And
I'm excited about that, too, Chris. For your listeners out there, I want to tell them in front of you that I appreciate that opportunity to spend time with you once a month. It's going to be fun to come on. I love the interaction. I think you do an unbelievable job on these podcasts. I don't know why somebody smarter than you and I haven't gobbled you up yet. I think that's going to happen to you eventually, and I think bigger things are ahead for you. But it's going to be fun.
Yes, it will. I appreciate you very much, TP. Take care. All the best to you and your family, and I'm looking forward to the next time already.
God bless you, Chris. Nice talking to you.
See you, Tom. That's the great Tom Patri. TomPatri.com. I tell you what, folks. When you look at Tom's site, and it's fantastic. He's got great videos on there. He's got articles. Now, again, as I said in his intro, I subscribe to Golf Tips magazine because they started to work with Tom. And now, I get that magazine. It comes, I think it's like 6 times a year. It comes like every other month. But it's something you keep, right? It's not something you flip through one time and you put it in the recycling bin, because the tips that he and some of the other instructors that are in there, and he talked about what a great array of instructors that he has helped assemble there. And Allison Kurt's a great friend of the show. We've known Allison for many, many years. Cindy Miller also is a part of that team as well, and Cindy also a great friend. But the tips that they have, I keep those things right here next to the desk, because I'm going to refer back to those things throughout my golfing life. Not just this week, not just this month, not just this year, but the tips are that good, and they are things that you're going to want to take with you out on the practice range. Lay that magazine down. You're going to see a lot of great visuals in there, and then read through that so that you can improve your golf game. And like I say, Tom's a wonderful instructor, but the privilege about it, and guys like Brian as well, but 10 times better person than he is a golf instructor, and he's one of the great golf instructors that has ever lived. And certainly glad to have Tom as part of the show throughout the remainder of this year, and hopefully for many, many years to come. Looking forward to catching up with him again real soon. All right, folks, it's time for me to put a bow on this edition of Next on the Tee. I want to send out my thanks to Richard Zokol, Brian Jacobs, and Tom Patri for joining me tonight. Please give me your thoughts. Go online. Go to our Facebook page, Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro. Give me a comment there. Go to my website, nextonthetee.net. Give me a comment there. Let me know, what do you think? How we doing? Anything that you want to know, or if you've got questions for someone who has been a guest, you can see our guest schedule on there, so you can see who some of our future guests are going to be. You can see some of our archive episodes. We also link back to our page over on Podbean. I can't thank those guys enough for featuring us every day on their mobile app. If you download the Podbean app and you go into their categories section, right there as you download the application, you tap on the app. You're going to see categories. Click on categories, and look around. You'll see golf. And you can get to our page right there, and you can take us with you everywhere you go right there on your mobile phone. But thank those guys enough for having faith in us and featuring us, like I say, every day. Very much appreciated. And just as a side note, if you love streaming podcasts across all genres, not just sports, not just golf, but across all genres, Podbean's the place to go. Please also check out our sister show on the football side, Thursday Night Tailgate, with me and my co-host Bob Lazari and our announcer Joe LaGenusa. That show streams live every Thursday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can stream it live on Blog Talk Radio. And again, that show, like this one, available as a podcast over on Podbean. Plus, you can also find both shows on great places like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audio Boom, Amazon Alexa. Now, just tell Alexa, hey, play podcast Next on the Tee. You can listen to us there as well. On Thursday Night Tailgate, we are joined every week by 5 NFL legends who come on and share stories from their playing days, plus give us their insights into what's going on around the league now. Plus, we also highlight 2 players doing great things in their communities in our Spotlight on the Positive segment. That website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com. And again, this site online at nextonthetee.net. Folks, thank you again for choosing to listen to this show tonight. We really appreciate the fact that you are making us part of your golfing content. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.
You've been listening to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, where PGA and LPGA pros and top instructors and media members go to tell their stories. Join us the same time every Tuesday to hear more stories about the game we love from people who love sharing those stories with you. It's all about the great game of golf. It's all about